Up next, we're talking about dynamics. So with dynamics is just a fancy word for volume. Okay, so we're talking about volume. We're not talking about balance, right? We've already talked about balance, and balance is the relationship between each of the elements, right? And what is the loudest thing in the mix? What is the quietest thing in the mix? Things like that. Dynamics are there. There's two ways to look at dynamics. One is the individual track and the volume envelope of an individual track, which I'll talk more about in just a second. And then the second way is the overall volume of the whole mix. That's really more of a mastering thing. When we think about, is this a really loud mix or a really quiet mix? We might talk about that a little bit more at the end, but that's really something we reserve for the mastering process. And it's something that is a hotly debated topic in the mastering world at the moment. But let's talk a little bit about volume of each individual track. What we're really looking at is, think about this. Remember how this little vocal track clipped a little bit when I had it loud. I turned it down so it wouldn't, but it clipped a little bit. It must have been right here, or maybe it was right here. It's probably right here. It clipped a little bit right there, meaning it went too loud, and that means it distorted a little bit. Now, that's really hard to deal with, right? Because I might want this part of it to be good and loud, but I can't have that part of it good and loud because then it clips when it gets to here, right? So what I can do is create a dynamic envelope, a volume envelope, that makes it loud here and get a little quieter here so that the whole thing is approximately at the same volume. That's what we're talking about with dynamics, right? So I get the volume nice and good in this beginning part, and then it gets to here and it clips. I can use some tools to make it so that the volume of this doesn't fluctuate very much. Now, what that means is that I'm going to wreck some of the nuances of that performance, right? This singer may have very carefully got louder at one point and quieter at another point. And what I'm going to basically do is adjust that and take some of that out. Not all of it, maybe all of it, depending on what techniques I want to be using. But it's something where, like, if this was like a classical violin performance, right, I might not do anything. I might not adjust the dynamics at all because that is really important to that performance. And to adjust it really kind of ruins the performance. So, but in electronic music, we use it a lot. In pop music, we use it a lot. In just about all kinds of music, we use a lot of dynamics, envelope shaping, except for probably classical and jazz a little bit. So it is a very popular tool. Now, just like back when we were talking about frequency and how the EQ was the scalpel of working on frequency, it was our number one tool. Our number one tool of working on the dynamics is the compressor. Okay, the compressor is the scalpel of dynamic adjustments. Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit of time learning how a compressor works, a couple different kinds of compressors, and then we're going to talk about some other tools that we use that are related to compressors, like limiters and gates. So we're going to do that, and then we'll talk about some techniques for applying them. So in this first bit, we're just going to learn about the tools. Okay, so let's dive in and look at a compressor.